go ahead and get started. The September 14th meeting with the Faculty Senate will come to order. Welcome, everyone. We do have a quorum. Before we launch into the agenda, I'd like to ask all senators and attendees to identify themselves with their first and last name. To change your name, click on the three dots that appear next to your existing name. I see that some folks have a phone number, some folks have initials. So if you wouldn't mind changing them to your first and last name, so you should see the option to change your name next to those kind of three dots, or when you click on those three dots, and then you can change your name accordingly. So if you're looking at the agenda, you'll see the items 3, 4, and 5 are reports from President Gee, Provost Reed, and a presentation from Amanda DeBastiani on faculty notification of COVID-19 incidents. So in the same way that at the last Senate meeting, the President, Provost, and Rob Alsop presented and then took questions, I think it makes sense for the President, Provost, and Amanda DeBastiani to present and then take questions as well. So we'll do that as soon as all three have presented their reports or shared information. When the time comes for questions, senators may raise their hand and speak, or they may use the chat function, the chat tool. Senators who raise their hands will be recognized first. So anybody who wants to speak will be recognized first. To raise your hand, if you go to the bottom of the screen, you'll see that participants icon, and you should be able to raise your hand from there. While senators can use the chat, non-senators cannot. So anyone who isn't a senator has access to Zoom's Q&A feature, and you can pose your questions or comments there, and we'll try to attend to them as best as we can and as time allows. Speaking of time, I'm instituting a Q&A time limit of 30 minutes for our first 3 speakers. So I will try to keep to that, and anyone out there can keep me honest. So I think I'll rely on Dave Hauser actually to make sure as faculty secretary that I keep to that 30-minute time limit. Later on in the agenda, we'll have some for approval items. When the time comes to vote on those agenda items or any other motions that come to the floor, I'll ask that senators use their hand, use that kind of hand raise feature to vote as well. And finally, senators and panelists, if you are not speaking, be sure to mute your microphone or it shall be muted for you. Okay, so on to our first official agenda item, the approval of the July 28th, 2020 minutes, Senate minutes. So the minutes have been distributed as an annex to your agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minute from the July meeting? Remember, you can raise your hand or you can insert your comment in the chat. Okay, hearing no corrections to the minutes from the July meeting, the minutes are approved as written. So next on our agenda is our report from President Gee.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I couldn't, I'm still trying to figure out how to run this this thing. Anyway, it's, Natalie, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I know the provost who joins with me, as you know, there's never, this is as I tell everyone, this is a challenging time to be doing what all of us are doing, which is to try to consistently be good stewards of our university and to be good stewards of all that who work and who have commitments here to our faculty, our staff, our students, obviously our parents and others. And so, but it is a difficult time for higher education, as we read every day from so many different news reports. The provost will talk about why we made the decision to pause undergraduate in-person instruction temporarily, but I think that that was a wise decision. We really expect and hope that the temporary shift will help to slow the current unacceptable level of spread in our county. As that has been really the issue that we're facing at the moment, is our community spread, and it's an issue that I spend a lot of time thinking about. One of the ways I think about the university is this is a terrible analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. I think about the university as being the Vatican and Morgantown being Rome, in the sense that the university has its own world, its own sort of structure and function that it lives with, but yet we are part of this community. And one of the things that we need to take a look at in terms of the community itself is those students that are isolated, and others I believe really should not be counting toward what has been determined to be a number in the city and in the county. So I know the governor is looking at that. I know that there's a lot of conversation. I'm very hopeful that we can see our public schools get back into session. That would be terrific from our point of view, but we did stop. We did go back online because of the fact that we felt that there were some issues that needed to be addressed, and I think that has been an important part of where we are. We've always said that this is a dance. We start off with the foxtrot, and now we're at now we're dealing with it as a waltz at the moment. But I do feel confident that we'll be able to be back in the classroom, and people are going to ask, how do we make that decision? I think the decision is made on a lot of factors that we want to take a look at. The spread itself, the number of hospitalizations, how students have reacted to this very limited social environment that we've created. So I hope that the provost and others will be able to talk about that. But that is really my message today, and that is that these are not easy decisions. But I appreciate everyone. I appreciate the faculty leadership. I really appreciate the way that our faculty have risen to this challenge, and it is a challenge, and how they have really been very engaged in helping us to do what we need to do. As you know, our numbers continue to be really quite strong. Our retention rates are quite strong. So all of the kind of fundamental factors tend to be positive for us. But this coronavirus, until we can get a vaccine and really get our arms around it, is going to be sort of a daily stressor, and we're trying to make sure that everyone knows in a transparent way what we're trying to think about. So saying that, I think what I'll do, because we'll have questions, I think what I'll do is, Natalie, if that's all right, we can turn over to the provost and have her presentation, and any other presentation, and we'll come back to the questions, okay?
Yes, that's what we'll do. So next we'll hear from Provost Reed.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Gordon. And I also want to say that we do have Rob Alsop on the call as well. So I know that there's some specific questions about testing, and Rob will be able to, I think, answer some of those. So I wanted to say that from the beginning. So let me just reiterate what President Gee said, and say how much we appreciate our faculty who have been rolling with this evolving semester. I know it has been extremely stressful on everyone. It's just been a very stressful time, but it's been a particularly heavy lift for our faculty. You've had to switch gears several times, and unfortunately, we're not out of the woods yet. Now, we are hoping that this current switch to almost entirely online, except for graduate education, is temporary. We hope that we're able to bring our freshmen back in 2 weeks and return to the formula we established at the beginning of the semester, which was roughly 70% online and 30% face-to-face and hybrid. And I want to remind folks that the reason why we did this switch is because we had a spike in cases when the students came back. We received an SOS from the county health department saying that at a certain point in September, they were not able to do the contact tracing that they needed to do. They were overwhelmed. And then furthermore, we wanted to demonstrate to the community that we were serious about slowing the spread of the virus. So right now, those numbers are steady. We're watching them carefully, and that will be a big factor in us making the decision whether to return to face on September 28th. Now, this is all dependent on being able to control the spread of the virus and to hold our students accountable who engage in irresponsible behavior. And we have been working and will continue to work with the city, the county, and the state to enact regulations and policies that enable us to really ensure that our students who are irresponsible are being held accountable. Now, I'm going to say this is a big if, so don't read too much into this, but if we have to take a staggered approach to reopening, and that is certainly not our intention, we have asked our deans to work with their chairs and faculty members to identify which courses they feel must be delivered face-to-face so that students can achieve the course outcomes and proceed through their major. And again, if we had some sort of staggered approach, those courses would get first priority for face-to-face. But we are already looking ahead to the spring. We know that that is a source of anxiety for lots of people, our students and faculty combined, and we are trying to plan ahead as much as possible. We also need to be realistic about what we will be facing this spring in terms of the virus. We have learned a lot this semester. Our goal is to make a decision well before we announce the spring schedule on October 8th. So around the same time frame that we are deciding whether to reopen on the 28th, which is our intention, we will also be making a decision about spring. I think at first pass, and that some of you have experienced this, we went to the colleges and then of course to the departments and said, plan for the majority of the classes being face-to-face. We did so primarily because it is much easier in terms of scheduling to go from face-to-face to online than it is to go from online to face-to-face, because we had to make sure we had enough classrooms. But what I want to say to you today is that it is far more likely that our spring schedule will have something that is similar to what we have now, which is the majority of the classes being taught online and a smaller percentage being taught face-to-face, with the focus of preserving as much as possible the on-campus experience for freshmen and graduate students, as well as preserving some of those courses that are hands-on, experiential, and particularly for our graduating seniors, because of course this is their last semester. We do believe our classrooms are safe. We, with all the PPE, the social distancing, the plexiglass shields, and the reality is, the evidence supports that. We've had just a handful of cases, not even a handful, less than a handful of cases of faculty and or staff who have become ill with the virus. And as far as I know, at this point, that has not come from classroom contact. So we feel pretty confident that our classrooms, at least, are safe environments. We have received a number of questions from students and parents about the different modes of instruction. A goal for the spring, and it's a goal, is to more clearly identify on the course schedule the learning modality for each course. So on campus, high flex or hybrid, online synchronous, or online asynchronous. But I've been told this is a massive effort because it affects a number of systems, including Banner, so we may not actually be able to do it in the way that I would like for spring, but certainly that is a goal. I also have to say that we have received a number of complaints from parents and some students, more parents than students, about courses that we're offering as online asynchronous. They're not necessarily seeing the engagement, and they even describe them as quote unquote correspondence courses, which they are not. There actually is a kind of modality known as a correspondence course, and that's what these are not. So I want to tell you that Lou Slimak will be working with the faculty COVID committee that was established this summer, and I guess continues to Lou on a number of issues. And Teaching and Learning Commons to establish some minimum standards for engagement practices in online asynchronous courses for both faculty and students. And I want to say that, you know, the goal is not to interfere with how faculty teach courses, but to acknowledge that online classes are different and they require a different approach. And also for everybody to understand that our students didn't necessarily sign up for these kinds of courses. And they, particularly our freshmen, have some confusion about how they work. So the goal is to come up with a practical list of engagement elements to include in your courses, as well as some rules of engagement for students. So students know what is expected of them in an online class. And again, keeping that simple, keeping it short, but something that will be, I think, useful to faculty who are teaching online asynchronous. Some silver linings this semester. I want to reiterate some of what President Gee has said. Our enrollment numbers are fairly stable. We had an 8% decline in first-time freshmen, but an overall decline of just 3% of our enrollment. And that has a lot to do with the increase in our retention and our persistent rates, which is, you know, really very impressive. And part of that is, we think, because we suspended our suspension policy in the spring, but we're hoping that some of that is also due to, you know, the great work that everybody has done in the classroom. Our graduate enrollments are up slightly, and our enrollment in fully online programs is up 17%. So all this says, all this is good news because, first of all, it means the economic impacts that we expected are not as worrisome as we thought by having more students here. And it does say that students want to be here, right? So, I mean, those are all good signs. And then meantime, the life of the university continues to move forward. Our new promotion and tenure season is underway. We have 141 new faculty who are here learning the ropes in a very strange environment. I hope that you are reaching out to your colleagues who are new and making them feel welcome. My office is offering a number of trainings for faculty and for academic chairs. Our research efforts continue. We continue to see increases in grant activity and production. We had a 7% increase in external funding in July. One news item, we are not going to be announcing the call for nominations for honorary degree candidates this fall. We have a backlog from spring of awardees who we were not able to award because of the fact that we didn't have an in-person commencement, and we hope to be able to award those degrees this coming May. And then last but certainly not least, the university is making progress on addressing issues of institutional racism and racial inequality at WVU. These top action items from the committees will be released soon, along with a corresponding website, updates, and timelines. And I want to say, not making excuses, but part of the reason, or there were several reasons for the delay, not just COVID, but the groups were very ambitious, and we've tried to do sort of a little bit of not necessarily scaling back, but figuring out what comes first in the timeline of priorities. And then also, frankly, these are very sensitive topics, and we've had to build consensus in a couple of areas, and it has not been easy. That is my report, and I'm ready to hand it back to Natalie.
Thank you, Provost Reed. Now we'll hear from Amanda DeBastiani, the Special Liaison to the Provost for Incident Command, and she'll be providing some information about COVID-19 testing and notification, how students get notified, how faculty get notified. Are you ready, Amanda?
I am, yes. Okay, so I think there are a lot of you out there who have already heard from me, probably more times than you would like. But to kind of go over what the process is that has somewhat been suspended since we've moved to online, wanted to at least give you a little bit of information and allow you to ask questions when we get to it. But what we're doing at the university in terms of notifications for students is, and for instructors, is once a student or once a student is test positive or is considered to have a contact that requires them to quarantine, there's a notification that gets entered into a system called REDCap, which is what student health is using in the contact tracers. So what we do from there, once that gets entered, I go in, I pull the information, I take a look at everything, and then go and start the notification process. So one key thing that I think probably need to make sure that I clarify, if you teach an in-person class, you have probably gotten a notification from me about one of your students who has had a COVID-related event. That's the term that we use. So once they have a COVID-related event, you get a notification letting you know what the situation is, and then letting you also know that the student is going to get back with you when they have been released from quarantine. So I do not notify online instructors. We have had some special requests where people have asked if we could, and I certainly accommodate that because I understand everybody treats it a little bit differently. But in general, the notification goes to instructors, and then that's it. So from there, it's, we have asked that students and instructors work together. Students are supposed to notify their instructors to let them know that they're not that they have had a COVID-related event and that they will be quarantined. Again, it's not as applicable right now when everybody's online, because really the majority of students have been able to continue with the schoolwork remotely. So that's really the process that we've had. I think I've gotten the question several times about asking if we can let them know when a student tests positive. I cannot do that. I can only say a COVID-related event. That's kind of the key. You will also be reached out to if there's contact tracing that needs to happen. And again, that's not something that we've had going on so much in the last week, and you'll see that really diminish over the next couple weeks, because if students aren't in the classroom, there's not really a need to reach out and see who they're sitting by. But we have had several up to this point, and I would like to also reiterate what Provost Reed and President Gee have said. I cannot thank the faculty enough. You have been absolutely wonderful. My 11 o'clock emails that I send, a lot of times, people are quick to get back to me because they recognize the importance of doing the contact tracing. So I would like to say thanks to everybody, because I know it has not been easy for any of you either. And I think that's it, Natalie, unless there are questions.
Thanks, Amanda. So we'll now take questions for President Gee, Provost Reed, and Amanda DeBastiani. So if you do have questions, please raise your hand and you'll have the floor once I call on you, or you may pose your question in the chat. Okay, so I do have questions that folks sent in advance, and I think that what I'll do is I'll just run through those. And if other questions arise, be sure to raise your hand and or post something in the chat. So the first question is regarding the incident last evening. President Gee, you were photographed at CVS, I believe, and you weren't wearing a mask, and we're asking, or someone is asking that you spend maybe a couple of minutes addressing the incident.
Yeah, well, me bad, right? First of all, let me say that I did have a mask. I wore the mask in, and then I went to buy, first of all, I'm someone who doesn't make excuses for my stupidity, okay? enough people make it for me. But so I wore my mask in. I went to buy a couple of things that I needed to buy. My glasses were fogging up, so I took my mask off, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and then I had to go to another place to find the other thing that I was hunting for. So I wore the mask in, I wore the mask out. I wore it a majority of time in the CVS, but my glasses kept fogging up. It just goes to show that university president operates on moral authority, and I make no excuse. I should have let my damn glasses continue to fog up and not do it, because I had no idea. In fact, there were only two people in the store. One behind the cashier, and then I have no idea where my secret friend was, but he or she was certainly following me, and it is my fault entirely, and I don't make any excuses other than saying that I need to be fully aware that as university president, I need to live by the example that I set.
Thank you. So I do see a hand raised. Senator Sadavari, you have the floor.
Yes, this is Asad Dawari from Big Campus. I have a question for Amanda. She said that if any student, for those of us that teaching face-to-face, if any student come up with the virus, she said she's gonna, or the faculty will receive a letter from her. I was wondering if she was just saying for the main campus or everywhere else, including Bickel campus, would get a letter from her.
So I think I didn't catch the last part. I heard if it was only for the main campus. I have only been doing it for the Morgantown campus. I have not, although I will say I have not seen many come through for either of the other campuses. So now I also will send notifications to health sciences. There are a couple groups that I've worked out some separate processes where there are coordinators who ask that I send them a list of the students that are in their programs. And so I do that sometimes in addition to the instructors. In some cases, it was at the request of the coordinators that I just send to the coordinators.
Thanks.
Okay, looks like there's a question in the chat, and Amy, I'm just going to ask you to either read it or just kind of.
Yeah, that's fine. I suppose this is directed to the provost. This is Amy Hessel from Everly College. So in leading up to this meeting, I had a lot of faculty who were teaching face-to-face but are now teaching online reach out to me and tell me about the struggles of, in particular, the first-time freshmen as they were dealing with the various modes of instruction and the quarantining, and there was just a lot of initial chaos going on. And so I think the question from faculty is it really better to switch back and forth from online to versus face-to-face versus simply just committing to the online mode of instruction when it's otherwise not necessary to have face-to-face?
Hi, Amy. So I guess what I would say to you is this, it's not ideal under any circumstance to go back and forth from one mode of instruction to another. It's disruptive, it's stressful. Nobody wants to do that. We don't want that to be happening. We did that out of necessity, but we are committed to students. We told students that we would be offering face-to-face instruction to certain groups, and we want to see that through, if possible, this semester. So I guess that the answer, the same reasons why we have said from the beginning why we need to be offering some face-to-face instruction have not changed. And I totally recognize the stress and the complications of this. But we do need to see it through this semester if possible.
I guess, can I just follow up and just ask if this is part of your consideration for the spring semester?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I would say to you is we have learned a lot, right? We've learned a lot, and we are going to try to be as realistic as possible about spring in terms of what we think we can achieve safely in terms of density. And we will do our very best to stick with that mode, whatever it is. It's just, I think we were taken by surprise by the sudden increase in cases. And I think we have a much better idea now how to handle those, as well as we have we've been strictly enforcing some of the behaviors that led to that. So what I would say to you is, Amy, we want to be as realistic as possible for spring while still allowing for some face-to-face instruction if possible.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's a question in the Q&A. Oh, hold on, sorry. So there is a senator who has their hand raised. Parviz Famori.
Yeah, hi. Parviz Famori from Statler. I just want to say, I don't know about this mask incident with President Gee, but I just want to say that I was a faculty senate chair at 2006, and at 2006, President Hardesty, we had a one-day retreat on pandemic. This is 2006. It was in Pine View golf course. You can go look it up. And the whole day, and then the university administration told us it's not if it's coming, it's when it's coming, and the pandemic is here. And I can tell you that I see that this administration is carrying the torch. We've been forefront of all the issues as a university, I'm talking, that has come to us, and we knew this was coming in 2006. I didn't, but the administration knew, and I think, again, I said it last time, and I'm gonna say it again, thank you for all the good work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Very appreciative.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Two questions in the Q&A. This is the first one. I know that symptomatic individuals are getting tested. Is the university carrying out random COVID testing to assess the spread, and in particular, the extent of asymptomatic infection?
Natalie, I would toss that to Rob, who is also on the call.
Okay.
So the answer is yes, we are testing beyond symptomatic individuals in what I'll call all three different areas. So if someone is in quarantine, which I'll just remind, because I have to remind myself, isolation is when you've actually tested positive and you're being isolated. Quarantine is when you've had a close contact, and because of the risk of exposure, you need to quarantine. So we are testing individuals who go into quarantine on day 6 or day 7 after the exposure. So some of those individuals may be asymptomatic at that point in time, but we're testing them nonetheless. But I'll put on one side of the ledger sort of the symptomatic or reason to test them. And so we're doing that testing. The second bucket of that relates to our asymptomatic, what I've been told is an appropriate term is screening testing. And so it's not random surveillance testing, but instead we are doing random type screening testing within certain populations that may be higher risk of exposure. So for example, this past week, based on some wastewater sampling that some of our faculty researchers had done, we determined that there was potential for higher risk, I believe, at Dadisman and at Oakland. And so we did more screening testing of those two dorms over the past week. So we have several groups that we've worked on with the provost's office and the deans as to folks who we think are more high risk. And so at that point, that is kids in our dorms, but then additionally, if there are faculty or staff who by nature of what they're doing, are more high risk. So for example, at the Creative Arts Center, where you may have classes in theater or dance or music where there may be more physical exertion, or in CPAS for the same thing. So as time goes on, we will each week do that type of asymptomatic testing in those individual pockets. And then there are athletic related testing that is ongoing. The other thing I would add to that is we have to date relied exclusively, actually as an institution, on PCR testing. And so this is sort of the gold standard of tests. It takes, you know, a little bit of time, several hours, usually a couple of days, because you have to go back and forth to the lab for that testing. There has been a lot of work done on what's called antigen testing, which is still live virus, but it's the type of test that you can do, and it's not as necessarily sensitive or specific as the PCR, but it's nonetheless effective in identifying someone who has the virus. We are working on adding to our testing capability by adding a component of rapid testing with results in an hour for our testing capabilities, and we're hoping that within the next several weeks we'll be able to add that. Then additionally, the other thing I'll say is due to a grant that the Health Science Center received, we actually have been working with the hospital on ramping up our own PCR testing, which we hope by the end of October we'll have as well. And that'll speed up and enhance our ability to increase testing. So I know there's a lot of folks who want us to do more in expanding our testing capability. And so we hope to do that over the next several weeks as well.
Thank you. Another question from the Q&A. Since faculty know their classes and their students better than any general policy, why not trust the faculty to make the determination to return to in-person or stay online? This would empower faculty. That's for Provost Reed.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that question and I appreciate it. What I would say to you is that faculty understand their students, but they don't understand necessarily all that their students are thinking, and they don't understand their parents. So, you know, part of this is that we are responding to what we're hearing from faculty, from students, and particularly their parents. And the majority of issues that we hear are not about students wanting more online, but it's they want more face-to-face. So I totally understand that the faculty would like to be able to decide that. And really, we've worked with the colleges, through the colleges and through the departments to make those determinations about what courses would be offered online versus what would be offered face-to-face. But we also have to respond to what we're hearing from our students and their parents who pay their tuition often.
Okay, thank you. Few additional questions, and these are coming from ones that were sent to us over the weekend. So let's see. Will there be any policy changes to deal with course evaluations for this school year? This faculty member says, I asked because the students are really angry right now at WVU and the world for that matter. There's no mechanism for them to punish the university, but I'm confident that they will use the course evaluations like a customer satisfaction survey at a restaurant and hold the faculty accountable for decisions that have little to do with us. This person saying, yeah, that they've received great evaluations in the past, but they're concerned, very concerned.
Right, so as you know, we, in the spring, we allowed faculty to remove their SEIs from their annual, from digital measures files. We don't have immediate plans to do that right now. We're only in the third week of the semester. Just like we don't have plans immediately to allow students to take the pass-fail option because they also have anxiety, right, about how they're going to be evaluated this semester. So what I would say to you is we'll watch carefully. You know, we'll see how you know, when we resume to face-to-face, we'll see how everything is going and we'll make that decision. We'll certainly be open to what we hear from faculty over time. And I will say to you that we also, I know Faculty Senate is going to talk about this today, but we're also instituting a new early assessment tool that faculty can use. It's going to be an opt-in, but if the faculty can respond to what students say in those assessments, and or if those assessments are really positive, faculty also have the option of putting that in their file. And we did that purposely to create other forms of assessment of teaching. And in reality, it's also how the department and how the college evaluates those assessments, the SEIs compared to the other evidence that the faculty provides in their file. But I would say to you, we'll watch it. You know, for now, we're not intending to do it, but we will watch it and see how the semester goes.
Thank you for that. There is a question in the chat from Ashton Martin. Ashton, I'm just going to ask you to ask your question, if you wouldn't mind, unless you're having difficulty with your microphone.
No, it's no problem. I don't know if maybe this is an appropriate question for Amanda or an appropriate question for Rob. Sorry, Ashton Mara in the Reed College. I've just seen several national media outlets at this point reporting that there are issues with students honestly participating in contact tracing because of threats of suspension or other student, I guess, responses. And I'm just curious if there is any level of concern about that happening here, or any instances that we're aware of, any ways that we're able to prevent that from happening.
So, well, Rob, you can go ahead if you. From the contact tracing that we've been involved in, at least that I've been involved in, we haven't had that issue. I mean, in what we've been able to see, students are providing names. Now there may be something different that Rob is aware of that have come from, you know, parties or that kind of thing, but at least not from the contact tracing that I've been involved with.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, our students have been cooperative. Now, not every single one is. And when you talk about asking someone to go back 2 days before their first symptom and retrace all of their steps and to, you know, identify anybody that they spent, you know, were within 6 feet of for more than 15 minutes, that's a challenge. And so contact tracing is a difficult exercise by nature that can be frustrating. I don't think with one exception that I'll get to here in a second, we have not had a whole lot of what I will say recalcitrance in responding. Some of our unaffiliated fraternities refused to turn over rosters to the university of who lived in their houses so that we could make quarantine decisions for those students. Eventually, the health department, on threat of subpoena, was able to get those rosters moving forward. So we were able to get there, but they told us a flat out no, they would not provide rosters of who lives in the house to the university. So other than that, it's been, you know, again, contact tracing is a bumpy process, but most of our students have asked questions.
Thank you. This question is also, it looks like there's another question in the chat. So Jason Gross, would you mind sharing your question using audio?
Yeah, it's Jason Gross from Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. We have a faculty colleague in our department that's trying to really promote the community and university adoption of the smartphone app Novid, which is an anonymous contact tracing app. And we know that WVU has come behind this and supports the voluntary use of this app. We just think it could address a lot of these issues with students not wanting to hand over rosters if the university could get more behind the use of this app, which, you know, if there's a party or a social situation and you don't know who you were in close contact with, contact tracing kind of breaks. So I don't know if you know, it's kind of buried in the noise with all of the things that have been coming out about what we should do for this, but if there's a more concerted effort to promote the use of this app, it could potentially benefit. So it's more of a statement more than a question, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, so the only thing I'd say is my understanding of the Novid app is it does not provide information to the university as to who was in close contact with someone. It's more of a looking at the rate of infection or spread based on anonymous individuals updating their app so that the individual person knows if they've been exposed, but from a university perspective, does not get to the micro level to substitute for contact tracing. But we do I don't disagree that if more people use the Novid app, it would help us from an overall perspective.
Thank you. So this question is a student conduct question. This person's asking what processes and safeguards are in place for students being disciplined for COVID-19 related problems under the revised student code. To a distal observer, it looks like a rush to judgment. When do university disciplinary processes ever move this fast, for example? This person wants to know what access to counsel do accused students have? Are students pressured to or motivated to report on their peers? What independent oversight is provided to ensure fairness and to mitigate against university being prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner? The president's defense of the university's return to campus plan emphasized blaming students and their poor conduct. Is this not prejudicial?
So I can take that one if you'd like. That'd
Yeah.
be okay. So we are following our student code of conduct and our procedures, and so I'll address the interim suspension piece, which I suspect it may be driving part of the question. So first, know that interim suspension is reserved for students whose presence on university premises presents either a significant risk of substantial harm to the student, other individuals, or property, or is an ongoing threat of disrupting the normal operations of WVU. The students who have been interim suspended for violating a COVID-19 related policy involve students who had expressly been told to quarantine or to isolate by the university and failed to do so. In many of the cases, they failed to do so multiple times during their quarantine or isolation period. These behaviors, in our opinion, for these students do create a significant risk of harm to others. Additionally, under our code of conduct, when a university student is interim suspended, we need to move quickly through the student conduct and hearing process because the student is technically suspended until the hearing occurs. As is required under our student code, all students who face suspension or expulsion have to go through a process where they receive a notice of the charge, summary of the allegations, and the code they violated. Student conduct has an initial meeting with them. They're given at least 5 days notice of the hearing, and the student receives a package of all evidence and a list of witnesses that the university will present, and the student has to provide the same. For hearing level cases, the student can have legal representation. If they don't, in partnership with the law clinic, we offer them a law student who is supervised by a practicing lawyer. I'll note that all but 3 of the students who've been placed on interim suspension have obtained their own legal representation and are being represented in our hearings. During the hearing, they can present evidence. And I will say that the hearing is presided by an experienced lawyer who serves as the university's single adjudicator. She's neutral and independent, and she makes a determination as to whether the student will be found responsible or not. And after the determination, the student has the opportunity to appeal. So we do think we have a number of processes in place for instances like this, and we are working to follow them.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. If I'm to keep to that kind of 30-minute time limit I set. So are there any other questions from senators? Otherwise, I'll turn to the question that was sent earlier. Okay. So faculty who were teaching in person up to when we pivoted to mostly online, can we now please be retested as we were before for free and in an easy setup provided by WVU? Since we put our health on the line to teach our face-to-face classes, we'd like to know that WVU will support us getting tested again so we know whether we're safe to be around our families. And if faculty want to get tested throughout the semester, what's the protocol for doing so? Should they get tested by WVU or go to their PCP?
Yep. So as I indicated, so we are not planning on testing everyone if we come back, or assuming we come back to our face-to-face as we started the semester. From a timing perspective and from an overall perspective, we're not planning on going that route. As I indicated previously, if an individual is in one of the higher risk areas for testing, we will be doing some additional screening and hoping to add to our capability to do more testing as things move forward. I will note that for our faculty and staff, we do believe that the policies and procedures that we have in place for in the classroom are working and are helping to reduce the spread, as evidence of that over the past several days. And I think Marianne indicated that either from what we've tested, and I note that we're testing not a ton of our faculty and staff when we've moved to this screening over the last 2 weeks, but nonetheless, even from a self-reporting perspective, we've had very few. I think there's only been 2 faculty or staff over the past couple of weeks that have self-reported a positive. So on that perspective, if you do have reason to believe you have been exposed or you are symptomatic, you should contact your primary care physician and work through that individual for a test. And if you do test positive, then self-report for the university. And I'll just reiterate again, as testing becomes more available and our capability to do more testing increases, please know that faculty are some of the folks on the list that we hope to increase testing as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. So I do have additional questions that have been passed along to Provost Reed and the leadership team. And so we'll endeavor to get those questions answered in a timely fashion. I know there was some lag between when I could get the questions from the July 28th meeting to you when they were asked and when I could share them. And by that time, some of the issues weren't issues anymore because we were on to new challenges and crises. So again, we'll try and get those to you as quickly as we can, as well as, so we have the questions in the chat. So we'll include those in that kind of final document, the questions and the answers. So next up is my report, and I will say that it's been busy. Since our last Senate meeting, faculty have requested Senate presentations on issues such as intellectual property rights as they apply to course material. So, and that question came from several folks. So I've asked General Counsel Ryan Watson and Stephanie Taylor to present at the November 9th Senate meeting on intellectual property rights. Faculty have also asked for more information and support on accessible teaching, especially in online environments. And so I've invited members of the Office of Accessibility Services to present at our October 12th Senate meeting. I've also made some headway on plans to improve communication between the Senate and the broader faculty. So I met with, a couple of weeks ago, I met with the chair of Penn State's Faculty Senate to gather information about their two-way communication system, and they use a message board, and that's one tool that we're exploring. So I just kind of got more information about how that worked and how effective it was. Ashley Martucci, Emily Murphy, Dave Hauser, and I have also met with Kim Becker, the Director of Communications out of the Provost's office. And we've met with librarians, Ian Harmon and Jane LaBarbera, who are helping us think through kind of information management more broadly. So some other things that I've been working on, one of them is the next agenda item. So with the help of our parliamentarian, Matt Totolo, and our faculty secretary, Dave Hauser, and Judy Hamilton, of course, I've also drafted Senate rules for electronic meetings, and well, that'll be the next agenda item. So lastly, over the past several weeks, colleagues in distress have reached out to me, to Emily Murphy, to Ashley Martucci, to Dave Hauser, and I know to others of you. I know Lisa DiBartolomeo has also gotten lots of emails and calls. So we have colleagues whose nerves are frayed because disruptions have become the norm and the semester doesn't have a rhythm. Colleagues who now carry unsustainable teaching and service workloads. Colleagues who are suddenly teaching their own children at home while also frantically putting together their files for annual review. I know a lot of us can relate, and I know that many of us feel like we're sinking. So a few weeks ago, I shared an article on faculty burnout with President Gee. And this morning, another article on burnout appeared in Inside Higher Education. Both texts suggest some principles that we can follow as an institution and some actions our leaders can take to support us. So I'm going to quote the Inside Higher Education article here. So the first suggestion is to acknowledge that things are not normal. The second is that respect childcare and other personal needs, respect one's childcare and personal needs. The third is that we need to triage what work is essential and reasonable. The fourth is that we need to demonstrate flexibility in reviewing faculty accomplishments. And then the fifth, and this is especially for our leaders, is to invite faculty to talk about their experiences, listen to what they need, and respond to those needs in tangible ways. And the last part of the article was especially striking. And in it, I think it's just called Burnout. The author states, rightly, that burnout is often the result of multiple and repeated institutional decisions that are made beyond and outside a faculty member's control. So in the spirit of shared governance, I implore our chairs, our deans, and our provosts, and our president to listen to and support faculty and to invite us into conversations about spring planning or whatever else is on the horizon so that decision-making about teaching, research, and service does not solely rest in the hands of a few. So that concludes my report.
So, Natalie, can I just respond to that? Because you
Yes.
did share that earlier article and I shared it widely. And then I just read the article this morning myself on burnout that appeared in Inside Higher Education. I think we all realize that this is one of the most stressful, unusual times that any of us have experienced. Certainly for me, you know, I've been doing this for 40 years as a president, and I can tell you that it is something that we all need to determine how do we make this this work best for our faculty, for our staff, for our students, but particularly I think that the faculty are on the line. We put a lot of pressure on each other. We all we're faculty because we're high achievers and high expectations. And I think the way that we moderate those issues is very important. And I was thinking earlier of the question that came. I think it came from Richard Turton about trusting our faculty, and I want you to know that I think without a doubt that the provost and her team, and certainly Rob Alsop, his team, and all of us, we trust you very much so. And one of the things we want to do is lift some of the burden from you, and at the same time, we have to understand that this is a very complex institution. There's just no direct and right answers. You know, if I think about it, the three-legged stools, we have faculty and the faculty issues, we have politics and we have policy, and how all that intersects in an institution that has medical centers and programs all over the world, and all of these issues come together. So I think what we have to do is we have to just be understanding of each other, all of us. We're all on the same side of the table on this, but more importantly, any suggestions, any way that we can be of help to each other, I think is immensely important, because I can tell you this, I look in the eyes of the senior administrators of this institution, look at it generally on a Friday afternoon. I just look at them and they're frazzled, they're burned, anything you want to say. So it's a university phenomenon, and I cannot agree with you more that we all have to figure out a way to get through this keyhole in some semblance of having been really supportive of each other.
And can I add to Natalie and to what President Gee said is, you know, we do meet regularly with the leadership a faculty senate, and we look at you, administration, as a conduit to what faculty are. And so we've heard, we hear things, we respond to them. We certainly, for example, around childcare, have made a number of initiatives directly as a result of those conversations. But I think, Natalie, and others, if there are more specific ways in which we can hear your voices and respond to your concerns, let us know, right? We have to make decisions quickly, and we have the big picture, but let us know if there are other ways that we can be more responsive.
Okay, thank you. I promise to do that. I have some ideas. Are there questions for me? Other questions or comments? Yes, I see there's a question from Parviz. Parviz, go ahead.
Are we gonna have an October State of University address?
You know, Parvis, it is on my schedule, so I think we'll have one. I suspect it will probably be a remote like we're doing now, but I certainly plan on having a university.
No kidding. No
Yeah.
kidding.
Right.
Are there questions or comments for me? Okay, so we'll move on to item 7. This is our first for approval item, special rules of order for electronic meetings. So we use Robert rules to conduct Senate business, and we do so to ensure that our meetings are efficient, orderly, and democratic. But electronic meetings pose a special challenge because the tools can also introduce chaos into what's normally an orderly proceeding. So the special rules of order are meant to stave off chaos by providing some guidelines for things like holding the floor or interruptions and voting. So that's a little bit of context. Are there any questions or points of discussion regarding the special rules of order? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the special rules?
So move.
Thank you. Let me clear. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. I see folks are still raising their hand, which is why I am quiet. I'm counting. I see 76, 77 votes in favor. Still going up.
Natalie, there's also a couple of people that are raising their hands like on the video itself.
Okay.
I saw 3 or 4.
Okay. Okay, so right now we have still going. Okay, the reason that I'm counting is because I'm supposed to, according to these special rules, record the yes votes. Okay, so we got a couple whose hand icon has have disappeared, but as far as the hand icon goes, can you see those, Dave? Do you see what those are? If you open the participants window.
I've got 93.
93. Okay. So would you mind recording them? So like why 93? I'll do that part. Okay. So I'm gonna, Julie, can you clear the hands for me?
Yes, I'll clear the hand.
Thank you. Okay. Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Okay. There are 0 opposed, and so the motion passes. We now have special rules of order for electronic meetings. Very good. The next item on our agenda is our Committee on Committees report. Maria, are you ready? If you're talking, we can't hear you. I did see you earlier. So she may have stepped away.
No, she's here. I've tried to get her to unmute.
Okay.
And Maria, I can see you. You just need to unmute.
We can just come back to Anne-Marie. Okay. We'll just come back to item 8. So we'll move on to item 9, our curriculum committee report. Jennifer, are you ready?
There, now, can you hear me now? Okay. All right, I'll make it really quick. We did, there's a summary of the course and program actions that we approved last year, provided in Annex 6 for your information. We have met twice so far this semester, and there will be proposals on the way very soon to exec. The last thing I'll say is just we're working on ways to provide more guidance to units as they develop their proposals in the spirit of having, higher quality proposals from the get-go. And that's really all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Jennifer? Okay, thank you. So we'll move back up to item 8 and our Committee on Committees for approval item. Annex 1. Ready?
Ready now. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
I was just kicked out of the meeting. Sorry. So I'm Anne-Marie Hibbert from Chambers, filling in from Michael Germano, Chair of the Committee on Committees. We have one approval item. So it's Annex 1, which reflects changes to fill vacancies and or repopulate 4 standing committees and 2 special committees.
Thank you. Are there any questions or points of discussion for the Committee on Committee Chair? It looks like we've got a couple of questions. Okay, so we'll start with Assad.
Assad Dawari from Beckley campus. This is maybe a correction, maybe if I'm right. I'm a member of 2 committees, Research Integrity and Welfare Committees. In both of them, the column says for current senators, there's no. I don't know if this was to be corrected or not.
Anne-Marie, is that something that needs to be corrected?
I will have to refer to Michael on this one.
Okay.
I'll make a note of it to have it corrected.
So does that mean, there looks like there are a couple of others. A minor amendment This is in the chat. Rose Casey's a senator on the library committee, but the annex says that she's not. Rose Casey.
Okay.
Oh, it just says that she's on the committee, but she's not a senator. So she needs to be listed as a senator. So Judy, how do we go about, or can we approve something that requires corrections? Can we approve the committee appointments?
That particular instance we can. We'll just go ahead and correct those in our records in the Faculty Senate office.
Okay. So are there any other corrections or questions? I see there are a couple of hands raised. So Ruchi?
Hi, I posted that in the chat. I'm an assistant professor, not associate.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm making a note of them.
And then Shine?
Yeah, I think that Jessica Hott needs to be added to the Faculty Welfare Committee as a non-senator. She had volunteered last year and it was supposed to be added, but I don't see her on the list.
Okay. Judy, can we still approve them with all of these changes? Or do we need to go back?
We can. We'll probably submit a new annex for the next meeting to add Jessica.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the committee appointments with all of the revisions that we need to make?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. It just takes a minute or so to get all of the hands. Okay. So it looks like, again, we have 94, 93 yeses. Any opposed? Or 94? There we go. So one more time. Are there any opposed? Sorry, we were clearing the queue. I should have waited to take a vote. Okay, so that's 94 yes votes and 0 no votes. Okay. Next, we will hear from Lisa D, whose name I brutally botched. I am very, very sorry.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
On Jeffco. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. So the Jeffco only has had one meeting so far, but we already dived in. We've already got some courses to approve. So this year we will continue to approve new courses for the Jeff. We'll review courses that may want to move things around a little bit. And we also decided in our ongoing work to aid in the Provost Office assessment of Jeff, which is part of our call, is to look at Jeff 7, which is a pretty broad and disparate grouping of global and diversity studies, for those of you who don't have the Jeff areas memorized, and to look at that with a view to kind of pumping up the diversity representation there. So in order to coincide with the Provost Office, who asked us to look more specifically at the diversity representation among those courses, to combine that with our look at how to assess that area. So that's what we've been doing so far this year.
Thank you. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Lisa? Okay, moving on. So we're at item 11, Teaching and Assessment Committee report. So it's Jessica Vanderhoff. Jessica, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jessica Vanderhoff, WV Libraries. So to facilitate the assessment of instruction beyond the traditional SEI, TACO developed the early semester teaching assessment during the 2019-2020 academic year, and the survey can be found in Annex 2. All instructors should have received an email announcement approximately 2 weeks ago outlining the details of the survey, and then another email first thing this morning that prompted them to opt in if they so choose. Please note that participation, while strongly encouraged by TACO, is voluntary, and that this instance of the survey is primarily designed for instructors assigned to traditional 16-week classes. I would also like to reiterate that course results will be shared with the assigned instructor only, and that anonymized and aggregated summaries will be shared with various university stakeholders, such as the Office of the Provost, Faculty Senate, and the Teaching and Learning Commons. As of 3 p.m. today, 380 sections representing over 130 instructors have opted in, and I do hope to see this number grow over the next few days. One of TACO's goals this year is to explore variations of the tool to better accommodate shorter 8-week classes as well as classes with multiple instructors. Finally, I would like to add that this assessment was not initiated in response to COVID, rather it was in development a couple of months before COVID became our new reality. So with that said, however, the survey questions continue to be relevant. And in fact, I would argue that the questions and respective responses are even more relevant now than ever. And so we hope that the survey results will give instructors an opportunity to reflect on your current teaching practices, the transitions that we're all going through with our instructional continuity plan, clarify student misunderstandings, and hopefully engage students in ways that enhance the overall learning experience. So that's kind of my synopsis of the early semester teaching assessment, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. It looks like you've got one question in the chat, so that's from Ruchi Bahandari. Ruchi, would you like to read your question? Or
sure, this refers to question 2A. So, you know, question 2 had that 5-point scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And then there's the display logic where the students are being asked to elaborate. But the question then is, your response to the last question suggests that you are confused or frustrated. I think we're putting words in their mouth because they're disagreeing, yes, but we don't know why they're disagreeing, right? So should we not use the words confused or frustrated and just say disagreement? Like suggest that you are disagreeing.
Right, so none of the questions were intentionally meant to be leading, or the language was not intentionally meant to be leading. I think what the committee did in our various iterations and wordsmithing of the tool was to think about language that the students are more comfortable with than we as faculty and researchers. And so we, again, it wasn't necessarily to be leading, but it was to prompt them to say, okay, something was frustrating, or you disagree, right? And so what was that thing? And so that language was a prompt, and that we chose that language because of our target audience of the students, and having them, you know, think about descriptive language. So that was the word choice for that. But obviously, this is only a pilot. And we are always happy to, one of the goals of the committee this year is to assess the assessment, how redundant that sounds. So obviously everyone who is participating or chooses not to participate, we are happy to gather your feedback on the survey questions, as well as what worked and what didn't work for you. So I will make a note of that and we can revisit that for the next version of this particular assessment.
It looks like there's another question. This one from Amy Welsh. Amy, do you want to state your question?
Sure, yeah. So Jessica, I was just wondering if these SEI results from the mid-semester one are going to show up on digital measures for promotion and tenure. And just also wanted to clarify, you did say that the results will go to chairpersons, deans, etc.
So to answer the first question, no. These are for your own reflection as a formative tool. And so obviously if you choose to embed them within your digital measure, your performance narrative, by all means, just to show the evolution of your instruction over the semester, you can personally choose to put them into digital measures, but they are not, there is no expectation that they will be used in any type of annual performance evaluation. So that was the answer to your first question. And the answer to your second question is with regard to who the information is going to be shared with. So again, it's going to be more at the higher level of like basic descriptive statistics and summaries to say how many sections participated at what level. So if we had, say, 100 sections of English 103. So it would be more just summaries at that level. Again, we are promising instructor anonymity. So there'll be no data that's given away that will jeopardize your privacy of your results. So with the department chairs, if it's shared at that level, it would just be those summaries. Does that answer your question, Amy?
Yep, it definitely does. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Jessica regarding the early assessment pilot? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 12, another for information item, the 2019-2020 committee reports and 2021 goals. So in the interest of time, I've asked each committee chair to provide a very brief report on committee accomplishments in 2019 and 2020 and also brief goals for 2021, 2022. So we will start with the Committee of Retired Faculty.
I'm Jean Walashuk, retired faculty. I think the goals are there. If anybody's got any questions, just to kind of expedite the process along, everybody can read it. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to answer those and share back with the committee. Okay.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the Committee on Committees.
Hi, everyone. This is Leslie Cottrell. Michael's not able to join us today, as Anne Marie mentioned. So I'm mentioning our report. In general, our mission and goals stay the same across each year, with the main purpose being to compose all of our committees that you saw from Anne Marie's record, plus several others. We continue to follow those over the course of the academic year, ensuring as someone leaves, someone's able to replace them, either as a senator or non-senator. And we did pick up a couple of the new committees just in terms of monitoring them this year as they transition from the pilot year last year to this year. So we will continue that and work with everyone along the way. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the Committee on Committees? Okay, we'll move on to the Curriculum Committee.
So yeah, I don't really feel I have much to add to from what I said before. Excuse me, there goes my video again. Yeah, you can see the courses and programs that we approved and so forth, and the fact that, you know, you can see in the goals of, you know, looking for ways to streamline the process. We're really just trying to create better proposals from the get-go. So that could be partially based, you know, web resources we provide, but there could be some more active forms of assistance as well.
Okay, terrific. Are there questions for Jennifer for the curriculum committee report? Okay, moving on to faculty welfare. So that would be, I don't know if, is Maria Kolar on? And it doesn't sound like there's a proxy. Okay, so we will move on to Jeffco.
I like the sigh as you say that. I don't have to add to what I said previously. Last year, we worked closely with the Provost's office in continuing preliminary discussions about potential revisions to general education at WVU. We continued working on assessment issues. We continued to approve new courses, and that will still be our goal this year. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, hearing no questions, we will move on to the Inclusion and Diversity Committee.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. So 3 goals that we achieved last year, although you can look in, Annex 9 for more details. We did create a set of research-based principles concerning best practices for campus climate assessments. We also recommended a campus climate assessment on inclusion to establish a baseline on inclusion and diversity at the university. This recommendation was taken up by the Associate Provost for Faculty Development and Culture. Another thing that we were able to do last year was pilot a reading and lecture series on issues of inclusion and diversity in the College of Education and Human Services. And then another thing that we were able to accomplish last year was we were able to receive an analysis of data using iPads, which detailed trends in racial, ethnic, and gender diversity in undergraduate students and instructional staff with faculty status at WVU. And you can actually see that data in Annex 9A. In terms of this year, we just met this past Friday. So 3 goals that we have right now. So regarding that analysis of data that details the trends in racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, we plan to work with entities to consider how we might build actions towards greater inclusion and diversity, and the ideas that this data invokes. A second thing that we talked about was gathering information regarding the action-oriented working groups formed during the summer to address racism and racial justice within our university system. Specifically, we seek to learn about the progress these groups have made and help push for a related agenda. And then the third thing we're currently working on is efforts to create a summit to take place during Diversity Week, where we aim to create a space that can bring together student and faculty-led groups engaged in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, enabling them to set the agenda and communicate and collaborate with other groups across campus.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Are there questions for the chair of the Inclusion and Diversity Committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to
I raised my hand.
Oh, I didn't see your hand.
Always raised. So, hey, thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm telling you. I mean, the future is about equality and justice for all. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I also want to thank Lori Andrus for all of her work last year, establishing this committee. We're only in our 2nd year, but Lori Andrus did an amazing job last year. So thanks to her.
Okay, I see another hand raised, Stan Heilman. Stan, you have the floor. A leftover? Is it a leftover? Unintentional hand raise? Oh, Stan, are you ready? I'm just going to lower your hand. Okay. All righty. Moving on to the library committee.
Hello, this is Brian Scaife from the Library Committee. Our goals for the previous year, we've tried to increase the involvement of the Faculty Senate in supporting the library's movement into open access materials and publishing. We're trying to increase faculty involvement with the research repository. And we're trying to improve communications between faculty and the library with respect to journal subscriptions and library resources through the use of some of our library liaisons. And we haven't met this year. We should be meeting in the next week or so to set up some goals, but I believe that they'll probably be pretty close to the same goals we have now. And there's a Annex 10 as well that you could refer to if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the chair of the library committee? Okay. Moving on to the Research Integrity Committee.
Well, that's Wayne. Go ahead.
Yep, go ahead, Bob.
Oh, okay, thank you. Our report's very short. We didn't do anything. It's a committee which most years is strictly reactive, and nobody brought anything to us this year. So we did nothing. And
Okay.
our goal for this year is to repeat that.
Great. That's excellent. Very good. Are there any questions for the chair of the Research Integrity Committee?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So, Bob, what you need to do is to pressure the administration to put more money, but this is not in these times. You shouldn't be doing anything in these times. But in long term, it has to be pushing the administration to put more money in internal grant and money, which is so that's my comment. Sorry. Hey man, I love this institution. I have a lot of experience with this institution, and I want to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. So perhaps, Parviz, your comment was more appropriate for the Research and Scholarship Committee, because I think that the Research Integrity Committee is a disciplinary body. Is that correct, Bob?
Well, basically, the committee, if our case is brought to it, will hold hearings, et cetera, and make a judgment about whether there has been a breach of integrity. Some years we also engage in rulemaking and that sort of thing. We had to a couple years ago per a federal requirement, but mostly it's just to react to complaints about possible research integrity violations.
Thank you. Got it. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, so moving on. Unless there are additional comments for the chair of the Research Integrity Committee. Okay, next, Research and Scholarship Committee. Is there a representative from the Research and Scholarship Committee? Going once?
Then I said what I said for the other one, for
Yes.
this one.
Yep, you did. Yep, okay. We'll move on to the Service Committee. Representative from the Service Committee. Okay, shared governance.
I'm here, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay, Tony.
I was kicked off my internet, of course, right at that time. So the Service Committee evaluates proposals that are competitively submitted, asking for support from the Senate Service Funds. Last year, we reviewed 22 grant applications and 10 proposals were either full or partially funded for a total of $60,024. And if you'd like to see the titles of those that were chosen, you can look at the annex report. We have not yet met for this semester.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Tony and the service committee? Okay, next, shared governance.
Hey, Natalie. My video is off for some reason. So this is Scott. For shared governance, just so that new senators know, this committee was created at the end of last spring after some concerns about the way in which the provost was appointed and some other concerns about recent personnel decisions and management decisions by the university. And the purpose of the committee was to look at whether or not the university approach to shared governance matches that at peer institutions. So what the committee did last year was basically look at about 15 peer schools, schools like Wisconsin, Connecticut, Missouri, like big publics like the BU is. And we investigated sort of where they fall in terms of the form and nature of faculty involvement in decision making. And what we learned is there's a lot of variation on that, but by and large, WU is very, very, very low compared to peer institutions in terms of the amount of authority that faculty have to set and help guide university policymaking. So what the committee did was it took language from peer institutions and also looked at the AEP documents and wrote up a proposal, which is in an annex on the agenda that was sent out to everybody. And it divides up ideas about what kinds of authority the faculty should have between primary/direct authority, shared authority, and advisory authority. And again, this is like drawn from looking at peer institutions. And so what the committee would really like the senators to do is share this document with their constituents and get feedback upon it. And whether or not, this seems to be the kind of set of goals that faculty thinks WU faculty should shoot for in terms of shared governance. We need that information. And so hopefully, fairly soon, but later on in the school year, the Senate can have a discussion about faculty feedback to this document. And then we can sort of, basically what the committee will do this coming year is talk through and examine implementation strategies if the faculty does support these kinds of goals. So the idea for like last year was to kind of look at what other institutions are doing. This document was created in reaction to that. And then this year, the idea would be if the Senate approves these as goals, that the committee in the coming year would work towards strategies to implement some of these ideas.
Thank you. Are there questions for the chair of the Shared Governance Committee?
Yeah, this is Amy Hessel from Everly College of Arts and Science. I feel like we have an immediate shared governance problem at the university in terms of getting some participation by faculty senate in the decision-making process about course delivery and the safety of teaching and so forth on campus right now. Are you guys at all engaged in conversations with the administration about that?
Natalie, would you or somebody else be better placed to address that? I mean, so the committee charge was pretty specifically broad, or it was written to be kind of more about setting underlying rules, which then would be applied to questions like that. I mean, we didn't want to get into specific issues until we knew specifically what parts of university administration seemed to be the norm for faculty involvement versus not. So we were looking more at a macro level than an individual level. My understanding is that some of the members of the Senate have been in conversations with the administration over the summer and fall about that directly, but I'm not the most involved person on those issues personally. So I am part of the working group that meets once a week on occasion for certain kinds of issues.
Yeah. So good question, Amy. Throughout the summer, Ashley Martucci, Dave Hauser, and Emily Murphy and I have been appointed to various committees for conversations about the kind of return to campus have taken place. But in those committees, decisions were already predetermined, and our role was to provide reactions, comments, but as far as any of that kind of decision making, for mode of instruction, that was not something that we had any control over. And the group that Scott is mentioning has been meeting all summer, and I talked about it at the July 28th meeting. I had listed all of the senators who were participating in that, and that group, what we did was very similar. We kind of responded to policies and poked holes in them. So for example, the COVID-19 syllabus statement was something that we saw before faculty Senate had the opportunity to vote on it. And we provided feedback on that.
And Natalie, if I may jump in real quick. So Amy, if you look at the way that it's broken down, in that first section, like primary authority, pretty much every major school has teaching and curriculum under primary authority for faculty. And so I think it's very important that the faculty kind of addresses what kinds of authorities it thinks are rightfully theirs very soon, for the reasons that you're mentioning, and also because probably we're going to wind up having like budget decisions made, program termination policies changed, that would all fit into this kind of concern. And so I think it's important for the faculty to kind of come to an agreement amongst itself about like what areas of policy making the university thinks really are and should be faculty driven as much as faculty consulted. Because like the advisory authority for the AEP documents for like other institutions is the lowest kind of authority. And lots of other schools don't work that way. So I think the sooner that we can like reach out to our colleagues, get their feedback, and sort of come together as a faculty about sort of setting priorities for what are specific areas of authority that that we believe we should have more control over. I think that will, to an extent at least, hopefully, enable or create more like legitimacy behind near-term quick action by the faculty to be more involved in directing these decisions that, as you know, Amy, are like being made for us right now.
So Parvis, you have your hand raised. Would you like to say something?
Yes, I have my hand raised, and let me put my video too, or whatever. Anyway, so yes, so in 2006, I guess my video is not working. Anyway, in 2006, when I was the faculty senate chair, AFT, Association of Federal Teacher, yeah, they came. There is so many of them. That's why, and they said, yeah, get your Senate to, this is 2006 now, 14 years ago. Yeah, get them to become unionized. And I said, at that time, Hardesty and all, I said, why should we? Because we are one, really one. And my thank today earlier is along the same line. We're one, and we're doing good, and okay, maybe the time is to unionize is coming. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments for the chair of shared governance? Okay, next we have the Sustainability Committee.
Hi, Natalie. Sean Grishecki. Amy Hessel and I were arguing in the background to see who's going to do this thumb wrestling, and she won. So here I am. So yes, there's a number of documents. The Sustainability Committee was a special committee started last year. Supposed to be for a one-year charge, but Amy did such great work as chair that we're on again. So number of documents added there that kind of met some of the 7 tasks that were assigned to the committee. Many of those were done, and reports are in the annex for those to look at. The main things at this point were we did go through and catalog most of the courses at WVU that have sustainability in them. Also looked at faculty research and service in the sustainability areas. Looked at our peer institutions in our area and their sustainability programs and studies. Looked at overarching associations. We have applied for the ASHE, which is the Association of the Advancement of Sustainability Studies, to become ASHE stars at West Virginia University to show that commitment. Finally, also within those documents, we do have a draft resolution towards carbon neutrality for the university in the future. So I invite everyone to take a look at those things. We have a great new committee assembled again and had our first meeting today.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Brian? Okay, and last but not least, the Teaching and Assessment Committee.
Hi, so we already talked at length about the early semester teaching assessment. So that was a big accomplishment of last academic year. Our other major accomplishments are all listed in Annex 16. But moving forward for this year, right now we have a working group that's looking at a more sustainable approach to reviewing course syllabi. As some of you might be aware, it's part of our charge. A few years back, we did do a couple of large syllabi review for Statler as well as for the College of Education. And we got a lot of great feedback from doing those reviews. And so we hope to move forward with more of the syllabus review. In addition to obviously assessing the assessment, the early teaching assessment, and enhancing and improving that, making more different variations available, like I said earlier, for the non-16-week traditional classes. And then lastly, looking at professional development opportunities in collaboration with the Office of Academic Strategies, Curriculum and Assessment, as well as the Teaching and Learning Commons, to help people better interpret their SEI, thinking about different alternatives to instructional assessment. So that's what's on the docket for this upcoming year.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Teaching and Assessment Committee? Okay, moving on. We have our report from our faculty representative to the state government, Roy Nutter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I realize it is getting late. And what's going on with the state? I'm Roy Nutter, Statler College. Your representative, the state government, and the State Advisory Council of Faculty. HEPC, the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission, meets this Friday. There's 3 things on the agenda that you might have peripheral interest in. One is state budgets of all state schools, including WVU. They also, in the agenda for Friday, list the research challenge budget, which big chunks come to WVU. You might be interested in taking a look at that. And the other thing that caught my eye was they are listing master's degrees at all state colleges and universities except the exempt schools, which be WVU and Marshall, and I think maybe Osteopath now. That is Friday morning, starting at 9 a.m. If you want to look at it, Google WV and HEPC, and then you can scroll your way to agenda. The Advisory Council of Faculty will meet this coming Friday afternoon. And I plan to be in attendance, and I'll let you know what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any questions or points of discussion for Roy? Okay, we'll move on to our Board of Governors report. Stan Heilman.
Sorry, Natalie, I didn't realize I had my hand raised earlier.
Okay.
Talking about from a mute button, it's like, Judy's like, you're not, you're done. Okay, so the last meeting we had was on September 4th. It was a special meeting, and as with all the other meetings that we've done, we were updated on all things COVID here at the university. The only thing that was really done public portion of the meeting was, as you might guess, the pandemic has, as you know, the pandemic has really impacted college athletics in a big way. And so some of these groups, such as the ones we deal with, the Learfield IMG group, have come to universities asking to renegotiate contracts. And so we approved the restructuring for Shane and his group to go and look at restructuring that contract with Learfield IMG. So that was the only thing we did in the public portion. But there is a committee meeting this Thursday, and then the regular meeting of the board will be this Friday at 11 a.m. So that's it.
Thank you. I was muted myself. So are there any questions for Stan? Okay, so moving on to our last agenda item, new business. I believe we have one order of new business, and I'm going to ask Emily Murphy to introduce it and talk a little bit about it.
Okay, for some reason I can't share my video, so I don't think anybody cares if they actually see me though. So, hi, I'm Emily Murphy, and Natalie and I were contacted by our student government president, who is Chase Riggs, and he has asked that we bring a item of to the faculty senate. Basically, what he has been hearing from his fellow students is that students have been asked by professors to be purchasing kind of third-party platforms for attendance and other kind of classroom resources. And in some cases, these additional costs have added up to over $250 for some students for like online kind of, again, attendance or other kind of classroom management platforms. And so what he has asked us is if we would consider as a faculty senate, if these things are necessary, for us to perhaps develop a committee and have certain platforms that are kind of deemed kind of appropriate from the TLC or the faculty themselves as something that the university would use as a whole, and not ask students to buy these a variety of these different things for different classes, because it just is becoming kind of a huge cost to our students. And so I would propose, or I would like to make a motion to I don't know if it would be an ad hoc committee, Natalie, or what we were thinking, but to look into some of these different platforms, potentially work with people from the TLC, and come back to student government in the provost office with some suggestions of kind of university-wide online resources for faculty to use in regard to attendance and other classroom management items.
Okay, so the motion is for probably an ad hoc committee, because a standing committee is a different
Right,
deal.
just an ad hoc committee to look into this issue and to come up with some alternatives or some solutions to, I mean, the faculty have issues where they need to be taking attendance and want, you know, classroom resources, but in addition, if the students are, so basically we just need kind of uniformity in what kind of platforms we can ask students to purchase.
Okay. So a motion for an ad hoc committee to look into
management.
The use of these third-party tools that students are being asked to pay for, and that committee would make recommendations that
the TLC and the provost office for kind of approved platforms to use.
Got it. For approved platforms. Are there any questions, comments, points of discussion? Yes, okay. So lots of hands, or a couple of hands. So Aaron Fleming, you have the floor.
Scott Fleming, Chambers College. So on this, is this for content or is this for course management? Because I think they're two different animals. I want to make sure that we word these correctly, because I think content may be specific to each discipline, and I don't know that an overall committee would be really helpful with that.
So from what I understand, and I had a conversation with Chase and another SGA representative, it's not the content. It's the like they have to buy various apps for attendance for various classes. It doesn't seem, it's not the content piece. It's the additional apps for attendance, and I'm not, yeah, and things like, I mean, like they have some of the things listed in here, Top Hat, and I can't remember. I was like scrolling.
Backpack.
Yeah, backpack. And
I have no problems with it as long as it doesn't take away my choice for content, my ability to negotiate the good price for the students, which is what I've done. Thanks.
Well, and I think that if this committee finds that we need to be able to have like flexibility, that they're asking that we put kind of that cost up front, like we would in a syllabus for the textbook, and not spring it at them like once class has started, that you need to buy these additional resources.
Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Looks like there's a hand. Heather Billings, you have the floor.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of comment on another aspect that occurs to me on this, and why I think this is an important thing to take into consideration. That the more apps and software platforms that we have our students accessing, aside from the cost issue, it's adding to their cognitive load, all of these new platforms, while they're concurrently trying to learn our content. And I think that's something that we need to consider in their ability to manage all of their online coursework, that we are making sure that they're not being overwhelmed with material, multiple sources of platforms to learn, especially if there are some common ones that would serve the purpose already, that if we just said these are the best practices, best recommendation, meets our internet security requirements for FERPA, HIPAA, whatever else might, depending on which programs they're in, to ensure that we are making these decisions wisely and not just every faculty picking one, not necessarily because it's the best, but it's the one they just happen to know. And so that might be something even TLC would probably be involved in, or IT support, knowing, in making sure that they meet our security standards.
Okay. Other comments? It looks like Tony, you posted something in the chat. Would you mind elaborating or commenting a little further?
Sure. So some of these that he actually brought up, and I'm sure there's plenty more that I'm not familiar with, but I am familiar with Packback and Top Hat. And though you can use Top Hat for just attendance, they also have online textbooks through them. And so I don't know what all instructors are using them for, but I know in the past, I'm not currently now, but I have used one of their online textbooks because they're extremely interactive. So I think that the best idea is to look at all of them, I guess, individually, because they're all very different.
Right. And it also seems to me that we need to take into account kind of how widespread these third-party platforms are, how much they're in use. Okay, so it looks like Drew, you made a comment. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's laid out in there. I mean, I read the letter from the SGA, and I mean, I agree with them and feel their pain. I mean, if it's a resource that replaces buying a textbook, then there shouldn't really be an issue, right? Because it likely is probably going to be cheaper, at least for scientific textbooks. They're pretty expensive, right? And then, but if they're having to buy these tools for attendance, I don't agree with that. We should not burden students with those costs. And if they have to be burdened with that cost, we should be consistent across the board so that if they're having to use it in multiple classes, they're not getting hit with multiple fees. I mean, I don't have any of these issues in my courses, but I understand that this does happen across the university. So, and from what I think we're all in agreement over this, but there has to be some, I see people mentioning best practices and whatnot. We need to come to some consensus because, you know, if the SGA, they didn't just bring this up for no reason, right? It's got to be something that it is seriously going on that the students had serious concerns about. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Dave, did you want to, looks like you've got your hand up too, David. Dave Hauser.
Yeah, it doesn't look like I can turn my video on for some reason, but that's fine. I just say it sounds like what we need the task force to do if it passes is go back to the students and get a better idea of what the actual problem is, so that we can better understand what the issues are, so that the task force can move forward and sort of report better.
Does that make sense? Okay, there's a Marianne, you're next.
So, okay. So I would be curious though if while the committee takes this charge on, they're also looking at possibly pre-COVID versus post-COVID, because some of these things such as using clickers was in use before COVID. PrepU was in use before COVID as the exam software, and they were required for classes, for a number of classes across the university prior to any sort of COVID type issues.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. And it looks like Brent McCusker, your hand is raised. Do you have the floor?
Yeah, as the father of an incoming freshman, I feel my pain. I spent about $150 in these add-on things. So it is not just textbooks. It is all kinds of things that lecturers are requiring. There are multiple competing systems. They get the students to get more money by taking out a subscription saying that in future your other lecturers may use our system, so they offer these one-year subscriptions. And this is akin to what we had previously, which was the textbook. Remember a few years ago, we had a committee looking at the price of textbooks. So what has happened is that there are these systems that have textbooks in them. There are systems that don't have textbooks in them. There are systems that give subscription services, and it is an incredible cost. And I really think even if we come to the conclusion there's only a limited range of things we can do, we are adding an enormous burden to our students and their financial situation. And so we really have the responsibility as faculty senate to look into this.
Okay, thank you. Susan, you posted a comment in the chat. Would you mind speaking to it? If your microphone's not working, I can read it. So you just say, McGraw-Hill has a proposal out to offer a one-time purchase to cover all courses for a given semester. So that's, I think, what Brent was saying. So no need to buy access many times over. They want to implement it in spring 2020. Yeah, okay. Okay. It looks like Andrea, you have a comment? Seaboard mobile app for attendance.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, IT, okay, let's see. I don't know if you can see me. Well, you can hear me. Okay, there we go. So a couple of years ago, IT had and proposed a new app that I used in my class a couple of years ago called the Seaboard mobile app for taking attendance. I still have my attendance app on my phone, and I'm still able to take attendance using that app. And I just wondered what happened to it. If IT stopped promoting that app as something to use to take attendance, or if anyone can speak to it, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. I think they ran, it was a test run a couple of years ago in the fall because I used it in my English course.
Natalie, it's Lisa DiBartolomeo. IT is still using Seaboard, and it's the same thing that we all use to record our faculty senate attendance.
Yeah.
So it's all free. It's part of the system. Students just have to download the app on their phone, and I'm working with IT. Well, I was when we were in person to use it in one of my big classes this semester. So that does still exist, and it's actually kind of nice. It also would help, I presume, with contact tracing, with figuring out who's in the class on a given day. So that is still an option.
Yes, thank you, Lisa, because I still use it, but I don't think many people are aware of it. I find it very useful as well, but now that we're remote, it's not as imperative, but it's certainly a useful app. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple more comments. This one is from Maria Galvez. She said perhaps the approach is to educate faculty about the options available. And then Amy Funk is talking about how expensive it is, also kind of reiterating the cost, the kind of exorbitant cost. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, so are we ready to vote on a motion? Dave, I don't think
we need a second.
Yeah. So I think what I want to do is I want to make sure that the motion itself appears in the chat. So Dave, can you copy and paste that? It's not working for me to copy and paste what we have. We recorded the initial motion in a Google Doc.
Dave out there?
Yeah, he is. He's trying to cut and paste. I think it's just, it doesn't like to do that.
Oh, he put it in there.
Oh, good. Okay. So that's the motion to form an ad hoc committee to look into third-party classroom management tools with an eye towards recommending to TLC the Provost Office for common platforms. Okay, so Susan, you said your favorite of having a committee report back to us, but not report back directly to the provost. Why not?
I mean, this is Emily. I mean, right now with our faculty senate kind of shared governance model, it is to make recommendations to the provost office. So I feel like that's what this committee would need to do. But
she's right, Susan. Are there any other questions or comments? Does anybody else have suggestions for the wording or want to change the motion?
Natalie, I would suggest that maybe Emily offer a suggestion on how to appoint members to that committee.
Okay, so my recommendation would be that we would send out an email to senators and ask for volunteers to serve on that committee. I think there's people that probably have certain expertise in that area, and I would like to have those volunteer that did have the expertise.
Is that reasonable, Judy? Is that a reasonable?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So Dave, could you post the whole motion with the second sentence added in about members? It's coming. Okay, So there it is. The motion is to form an ad hoc committee to look into third-party classroom management tools with an eye towards recommending to the TLC or provost office and/or common platforms. Members would be solicited among volunteers from the Senate. Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. So far, I see 68 yeses. There may have been some people who had to go. This has been a long meeting. 69. Okay, 70. And then I see a couple of people raising their hands like this. So that's enough to pass, right, Judy? Oh, I should actually, before I say that, I need to record. Julie, can you help me clear hands? Okay, so now, are there any opposed? Okay, so it looks like 70 yes to no. And so the motion passes. So I will form an ad hoc committee to look into third-party classroom management tools, and I will seek volunteers from the Senate. Thank you. Okay, so the last item is a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
You guys don't want to stay on forever?
Second.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hey,
all
you
the
did
troopers.
great. Hey, you
All
did
right.
great.
The
Yeah.
meeting is adjourned.